Well, hi everybody. I'm back. This is going to be kind of fun for me, I guess, and in a way. But I'm going to call this video Story Time with Lynn. And then at the end, I'm going to do a reading about the pyramids, if I have time. This is not a real short story, but I'm going to try to make it short and not give as many details. I didn't want to put out too much about my life. I want y'all to still like me. But I'm going to show you this. This is the front of the paper I was talking about. And I just looked at the date on this. And the date on it is, April 14th, 1990. 1990. Was Reagan president there? Here, I said I wasn't going to do politics, and here I'm already thinking politics. But I'm going to show you the front of this. This is what, I don't think they make them anymore, but it used to be a National Examiner, which was like an Inquirer. It wasn't quite as popular, but it was in all the Circle K, 7-Elevens, and all that stuff at that time. And it was called National Examiner. And I'm going to show you this so you can get an idea. I don't know, that's going to be on enough light to see it or not. So you can get an idea of what it is. It's like, you know, one of those rags that I used to say respectable people wouldn't buy, but I never thought I was respectable anyway, and I didn't buy them that often. It wasn't something that I'd go pick to read, because I was always reading books with something in it, I mean, all my adult life. But I also read everything I could get my hands on. But the reason I bought this particular paper at that particular time is I was in Arizona. They call it the something mountains, but anyway, it was on a trip I took where we went up to my folks' house up by Prescott, and then we drove over to Tucson and stuff, and anyway, we made a circle. And because my significant other, live-in or whatever you want to call him, his name was I can even give you his name because I'm sure he's no longer on this earth. His name was Jack O'Gorman. Jack O'Gorman. The reason I'm saying that name is because when I read this. So his last name was O'Gorman. And I'm on a trip with him, about a 10-day trip, but like I never got away. That's when I had the bar. I had to move heaven and earth to get things set up to even get away from that place. And I wouldn't have been buying one of these to read, but what happened is we're up on this reservation. I mean, there's still a road and everything. And I heard this noise under the hood. And what it actually wasn't even what I wanted fixed, but I was afraid to move the car because I thought it was wheel bearings, because I had been told that one of my wheel bearings wasn't good. So when I seen the smoke come out and heard the noise, instead of lifting up the hood and looking under, and of course Jack was with me, and he was a New Yorker, an Irish New Yorker who had never owned a car till he came to California, and I'm sure never looked under the hood of one even after that. And I didn't lift the hood, or I would have seen that it was the air conditioning belt that broke. And it broke even, I could even see the smoke, it made a big boom, and even smoke came out of the hood. But I still thought it was out of the front wheels. So I just called a tow truck from the front of a 7-Eleven, and that where this happened right when we were almost there. You know, we were coming down the road, it was in sight, and I just went real slow right up to there, got out and called the tow truck. And while we went in to wait, this was on the rack, and I just pulled it off because it had a picture of Dolly Parton on it. I was always kind of interested in what she was up to at that time. So I just pulled it off the rack and I walked outside. And my friend I was with, Jack, he says, I wouldn't believe a damn word I read in one of those. He says, what'd you cut that for? He said, you know you can't believe nothing in there. And I said, well, even if I read it like it's all fantasy, it's something to read. You know, I said, I don't know how long it's going to take for the tow truck to get here. Well, we just talked. I don't know how far away that tow truck was. The way they sounded when I called, like it was like it was going to be a long time. Excuse me, I'm going to turn this off. But anyway, the way it sounded, anyway, like it was going to be so anyway, it sounded like it was going to be a while, so I bought the paper and went outside, and he told me he wouldn't believe a damn word he read in anything of this. And I said, well, it wasn't to believe, it was just to keep me occupied. Didn't get a chance to read it because the tow truck showed right up. And I just threw it in the back of the car. We were sitting in the car, and I just maybe opened the front, and then I threw it in the back because the tow truck came. And we went back to wherever we were in Arizona, and spent the car in the garage, spent the night in the motel, whatever, and went down and picked the car up the next morning and took off and drove about 60 miles, and it got hot, and I went to turn the air conditioner on, and the air conditioner wouldn't work. So I had looked under hoods, and I should have looked under the hood the day before. It would probably save me $200 or $300, but at least I had 4 new wheel bearings. So I pulled over, got out, lifted the hood, and thought, oh my God, the belt, it was just still laying there on top of the engine. I guess they never even looked under the hood when they changed those wheel bearings. I didn't ask them to. I just told them to do it. It's funny, I was so sure that's what was wrong, and maybe because I was so sure, maybe it would have been dangerous. I was afraid they were going to freeze up and cause an accident. So because this was an older car, it was an old T-Bird, about 10 years old or something. So what I did was, we just went to the next town, and I went to the Ford dealer. So I just had to set this up so you could see how this all came about. And this person that I was with, he was married to somebody else. According to what he said, I didn't break up the relationship, and I wasn't looking to break it, whatever. When I met him, he said that they were separated. And whatever, by that time, I don't remember what he told me, but anyway. But he was married to somebody else. But we had been together for almost 2 years, about a year, and I don't know, over a year and a half. And I knew that things had to be changed because he was the eternal child, the eternal Peter Pan. And if I'd have been rich, I'd have just kept him around for company and to take me places. He was always ready to go do anything or go to any class I wanted to go to. But he was Irish, and he was an alcoholic, and he was a functional alcoholic most of the time, but not enough for me. But anyway, so I got to go back to this paper because it's so funny. So the next day we're sitting at the Ford place. They're putting the belt on the car, and I go get this. I said, oh yeah, I got that paper in the back. So I go out and get this and bring it in, and I sit down next to Jack, and he says, I don't know why you're reading that stupid thing. He said, you can't believe it. You know that nothing in there is true. I said, yeah, I know that, but I'm going to read it anyway because I don't have nothing else to do. So I opened it up, and I'm a fast reader anywhere, so it just took me a second. Good Lord, they got Lucy and Desi in here. This is old. Okay, here we are. So I'm sitting there reading this, and the reason this gets my attention when I read this particular one isn't because of Jack, but because of my ex-husband who had, my middle husband, we had been married 15 years, and he had left me for a younger woman, which happens all the time. I'm not crying about it. It's the best thing I'm sure that ever happened to both of us. But at the time it happened, when it happened, I didn't think it was. But it got my attention because I owned a bar and he left me. And the only reason I think he was interested to start with me 15 years younger is because he was an alcoholic too and a womanizer. So this is what, so I'm sitting here reading this, and this is Dear Tony, and it says, a million are following Tony Leggett every week Examiner. So this is a psychic in the Examiner. So I'm sitting there next to Jack, and he's sitting there telling me, well, I wouldn't believe anything I ever read in any of those stupid things. And so I get to this part, and it says, Heaven and Hell. And it says, Dear Tony, my husband and I have been together for 16 years, and he's an alcoholic and a womanizer. So when I read that, I thought of my ex-husband, who was an alcoholic and a womanizer. And we had been married for 15 years. And I thought, oh, that sounds familiar, and we had a fight in May, and he walked out. And now he's living with a woman who owns a bar. I miss him and want him back. Please tell me what you see. And so I still thought, well, that is kind of weird. And then I read underneath that it says M-O-G, El Centro, California. And I thought, oh my God, Margaret O'Gorman. That's Jack's wife. I mean, what would be the odds that I would pick this up in the middle of Arizona because the car broke down? Talk about there are no accidents. On a trip, on a vacation we were supposed to be on. And I said, so I told Jack, I said, you're not going to believe it, but we're in this paper. And he says, he said, I told you I wouldn't believe nothing in that paper. And I said, Jack, listen to me. We're in this paper. They're talking about us. And he says, what are you talking about? So I reread this to him. It says, Dear Tony, my husband and I have been together for 16 years. He's an alcoholic and a womanizer. We had a fight in May, and he walked out. Now he's living with a woman who owns a bar. I miss him and want him back. Please tell me what you see. M. O'Gorman, El Centro, California. So this is the answer. This guy's a pretty good psychic, but I knew I wasn't staying with this guy for much longer anyway. It was because he was the eternal child, and I need somebody to help me through life, not another child to raise. It wasn't because of anything he was doing that was that bad by that time. And it says, Dear M.O.G., I see a man who thinks he's in heaven. He's very likable, and you have plenty of competition. And Jack was one of the most likable people I ever met in my life. He knew how to be likable, and with a New York Irish accent and everything, he was definitely likable. So he thinks he's in heaven, and he's very likable, and you have plenty of competition. I'm sorry to say I don't see much happiness for you in the near future. You will get him back, but it'll take a while. Then it will happen again and again until he needs you, because due to ill health. You are a good woman, and I feel sorry for you. I'll work on your highest good because you deserve better treatment. So that was his message back. So anyway, and then instead of being, I felt kind of bad about it, because I felt, sometimes we don't like to look into our lives. And then when we see it in front of us in black and white, it's like, okay, what are you going to do about this? You've been knowing you needed to get out of this relationship for a long time. But anyway, and I ended up getting out of it. And what was so strange is his wife had moved back to Tucson, where Jack's mother lived, and the rest of his family. And I had let him stay because on the okay that he went to rehab, and he had gone to rehab while he was living with me. So even then, his family never liked his wife anyway, and they liked me a lot more than his wife, and they were so happy he was in rehab, especially since he was in a Christian rehab. So that lasted about 6 months, if it lasted that long, and then he got caught smoking, so they kicked him out, Christian rehab, whatever. And he came back. I think he was in the Phoenix area when he was going to rehab, so he came back to California, and I let him know that if he ever started drinking again, he was going to be gone. And by the time I read that, I knew that he had started drinking, but he was hiding it, and I thought, well, till I figure out what to do, as long as he's hiding it, he's not going to go overboard, which he was being really careful. But anyway, it happened just like that psychic said. I told him he had to go. His brother came from Tucson and picked him and his stuff up, and he went back to Tucson. And his mom said, as long as you're in this house, you can't drink, because I'm raising your sister's son in this house. And he went out and got drunk the first night. He went back to where his wife was and called her up, and she came and got him, which was fine, because that's probably where he needed to be at that time. But it's just the idea that what are the odds on something like that happen? I wonder what the mathematical odds would be on me even ever seeing that. If the car hadn't broke down, I didn't buy those things at the store. And but anyway, and instead of being unproud of that, Jack was so proud of it, he wanted to go buy a bunch more so he could give them out to his relatives. He thought he was a he thought he was a celebrity. Anyway, I've never forgot that, and I've kept that paper all these years. In 1990, that's a long time ago. No wonder it's turned yellow with age. But that's my story about Jack, and at least it got out there, because I always thought that was such a unique story, and even if I never get a chance to write my book, at least I got that story out. But that was so funny. That was a funny trip. I could have wrote a short story on that whole trip. That whole trip was unreal. We're up in the mountains at my dad's house. My dad's gone to Nevada for the summer, and this is up in the Prescott area. I'm outside, and we're taking cheesecakey pictures of me in a bustier or something like that, and leaning up against this huge gas tank, a 250-gallon one, the big. Anyway, out taking these pictures with my leg propped up. And my first ex-husband, who I hadn't seen in years, but he was good friends with my dad, had come over to spend the weekend in a trailer outside my dad's house. And here I am out there standing half naked, and he's taking pictures of me, whatever. And I look up, because it's really, unless you knew where the driveway was, you couldn't even found your way in there. And I hear a car coming, and I look up, and I look again and again, and I didn't recognize him at first. And then I thought, oh my God, that's Ken. So anyway, that was quite a trip. That whole trip was like maybe a wake-up call to life. I don't know. But anyway, that was the strangest 10 days of my life. And then I went home, and the guy that Jack had insisted I have take care of the house when I had somebody else in mind didn't even put chlorine in the pool for 10 days in the middle of the summer, and where it's 120 outside, and the pool was black with algae, and that was a trip. But I got the algae out of the pool. I was a hard worker. Anyway, I'm going to read real quick on the pyramids. I know we're not going to get questions of all the universe. I just want to know, I've never read cards on them before, although I've read every book I could ever get my hands on and everything Edgar Casey ever said when asked about them. So what I want to know, according to the Casey readings, they always said they were built as healing temples to help put people back together, because a lot of people that came down, he always said that tree people and snake people and bird people weren't that big of a fantasy. It was the way the spirit energy entered some of the earth energy when we first came down here. Now, I don't know, you have to really study and understand a little bit where that's coming from, but anybody that's ever studied the Casey readings very much has heard that too, I'm sure. And I just want to see, I've never asked the cards, were the pyramids healing temples to put people back together? Were they originally built? And they were, I'm sure that they had help from star people to build them. I'm sure they did have some extraterrestrials. They didn't just pump them right up there because they had a bunch of slave laborers. They had a bunch of slave laborers helping, but they weren't the main. They're not even off. Nothing. The foundation's still good under them. There was a lot more involved in them, just like I said, there are no accidents. But anyway, let's just see. I've never read or ever asked the cards anything about them. Were they built for healing temples? I was told that I even worked there in a past life with Edgar Casey there. But I wasn't inside the temples. I was kind of inside of them. I was on the door. I worked the door. I was the one that let the next people in, or whatever whatever was coming up for the healing sessions. But anyway, I'm going to see here. I don't know if it'll come out in the cards or not, and if it doesn't, I'll just cut this part out because I'm sure that story was too long anyway. But so were they healing temples? I don't know. I'm not going to go yes or no on this. I'm going to go ahead and draw a whole spill. Yes. So we already got the answer. I don't know if I can come up with any more about them or not, so I'm going to keep reading. It says, yes, they definitely were built for that. Look at this. Beautiful card. Beautiful card. Ace of Cups. Healing and love. That's what they were built for. There was, of course, we know there was a lot of planning behind them. I never looked at this card really deep for a long time. Let's see. Like a priest talking to some women or something on this particular deck. Now, there's definitely a plan behind the building of them. The Lord himself, look up there at the top. The energies from on high helped with the energy to build them. It was because man wasn't moving forward fast enough. The spirit energy was busy jumping all over for quite a few hundred years before that, and into the wrong things and wrong places. It connected us with other worlds. It was also a beacon and set up with the stars. It was like like energy coming through, like energy connecting us to the rest, like a map, like a beacon, like something that could be seen all over, because they were totally white. They were finished in total white with a big with a capstone on top that nobody seems to know what happened to. I'm wondering if they came and picked those up and took them back to wherever they were brought in from to start with. It was done to raise mankind up quicker. To help open their eyes, because we were just kind of running around in circles. The death card there. And to show us the new beginnings for the human race. Because the pyramids are a lot older than people say they are. This goes way back. Like I said, a lot of people on the earth at that time had different forms, or double forms, or like I said, when we first came down here in spirit, we had the energy to enter things, whether it was plants or the animals of the field or whatever. And at first it was really easy for us to jump in and out of them. And then it was such a different, it was kind of like heroin addiction or something. Pretty soon it was such a high to go out and run like a tiger or something like that, that people got going in and out so much that I think they got kind of caught up. And then anyway, because of the energy being mixed, there was some weird offspring made, so it was like a healing process. And we do have the Four of Cups here. It was to heal the family of man up. So that probably doesn't make any sense to anybody who hasn't studied the ARKC readings, but yeah, it looks like that would be a yes. First card out was a yes. Could have just stopped right there. But in case anybody had ever studied it, I thought I'd go on a little further and see what else came out there. I thought it might interest you. Anyway, I want to thank anybody that's listened to this, and I'm not sure, this is one video I'm not sure going to be put out. I got to see how bad telling a story like that on makes me look, although that's been a long time ago. I've had a lot of time to repent and change since then. Not that I have, but anyway, I want to thank everybody for watching and everybody for listening, and let you know that I love you all. Bye-bye now.